Phil says it's a fool's errand to try to make older people young, but it's enormously fun to make older people fast, and it's very good for you too. Phil Cavell is the CEO of the London-based bike fitting studio CycleFit, and in addition to being an expert on the biomechanics of cycling, Phil is the author of The Midlife Cyclist, a book for the 40-plus-year-old cyclist who wants to train hard, ride fast, and stay healthy. Today on episode 116, Phil and I discuss finding the sweet spot of exercise for fun that also serves to create a path to long health. This episode was a blast to record and is full of practical tips and good ideas for you to consider. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. All right, let's talk to Phil Cavell, the real wise athlete. Phil Cavell, welcome to the Wise Athletes Podcast.
Thank you, Joe. It's good to be here on Wise Athletes. I should just say at the outset, I'm recording this in London at CycleFit on a very busy Friday. Friday's always our busiest day, so you might hear people banging around in cleats and stomping down the stairs. There's two busy fit studios here and a physiotherapy and podiatry, so there's a lot going on. So excuse the background extraneous noise if there is any.
Well, that actually makes it more real. I love it. So anyway, thanks for the warning and no problem whatsoever. Phil, I got to welcome you again. I just got to say that I've been looking forward to chatting with you for a while. I mean, ever since your book came out a couple of years ago, and you are the wise athlete. I mean, this should be your podcast, honestly. So thanks for making some time for us. When we get around to the audience understanding your background, they're going to understand earlier in your life were a very high-end cyclist athlete, and then you have gone through the same arc of life that everybody, including myself, have gone through. And my understanding of your book is that that's sort of the genesis of that book. It's what happens and why, and how should you think about it, and what can you do about it, and things to not be afraid of, and maybe things to be afraid of. But anyway, I really look forward to getting to know you better and understanding your thoughts. But in particular today, as we have chatted offline, I really wanted to zero in on one thing. And the thing that really matters to me, and maybe matters to you, is this intersection of how older athletes can remain strong late into life, which kind of is your thing. That's also my thing. But the intersection of that with longevity, like health span, being a healthy person, and how do these things relate to each other? How do they help each other? Maybe how do they not cooperate with each other? You think we can talk about that?
Yeah, of course. And that is one of the major, if you like, one of the major questions in the book that I try and answer, that exercise is unquestionably beneficial for people of all ages, children all the way up to people who are in their 80s and 90s. It's a question of what's the right dose for the right person at that right time in their life. And the explosion of cycling has seen almost an assumption that exercising super hard at super high level for a long time is good for middle-aged athletes, as it is good for younger athletes. And then the metrication of cycling, where we're measuring power and we're quantifying our success on hills, and it's much more metricated when I was training and racing, means that guys my age, and I'm nearly 62, we can look at these numbers as well. And then the assumption there is, or not assumption, but the unchallenged orthodoxy is that it's always good to get these numbers up, and whatever we can do to get them up is good. Intrinsically, and also good for our health. And that may well be the case, but it's an assumption. And I guess what this book does, Joe, and what I wanted to do was question assumptions. I want to go back to first principles and question all the assumptions. And that intersection of exercise and age and health, that sort of holy triumvirate, is really what I'm, one of the things I'm trying to zero in on. Was that an answer to that question?
Yes, it was. In fact, you have as a wise person that you are, you have leapt ahead and answered the next couple of questions.
Oh, I'm really sorry.
that I was hoping. So that is wonderful. I want to leap into my notes here and pull three things out. I remember hearing you say that there were essentially three themes that you had wanted to put on the front of your book and were not allowed to as a author. I'm not sure what that means, allowed and not allowed to. But you had said, "Grow old, get fast, and don't die." I wonder if you might tell us, why did you want to have that on the front of your book?
I wanted something that if you were kind of just going through an airport lounge, or you were browsing in a bookshop, or something that would just kind of arrest you, and in a sort of fairly light-hearted, kind of irreverent way. And the book is, I mean, the book is quite irreverent in some ways, in its kind of style, I suppose. And I wanted to make sure that people knew that the book is a little bit irreverent, and that they weren't going to open it up and think, "Oh, I'm just going to get loads of training programs and all that kind of stuff." So, having that on there, grow old, get fast, don't die, is irreverent. It's provocative, it's funny, and and in a way, I thought that might self-select the people that would enjoy the book. And the reservation from Bloomsbury, probably rightly, was that for all the people that you attract with that, you're going to repel people. That's harsh. It's coarse. It's too reduced, too reductive. And they said, look, we'll put it on the back and we'll put something more general on the front. And hey, this is my first full size book, so you've got to take good advice when you hear it.
Sure.
A lot of people that I talk to about the book, they like that. They like it speaks to them. Grow old, ride fast, get fast, ride. It speaks to them. It's like, yeah, that's shorthand. But I'm sure it offended some people also.
Well, you can't please everybody all the
You
time.
cannot.
In fact, that's a sure recipe for
You
failure,
cannot.
to try to serve everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wanted to dive into it a little bit. I mean, the don't die part, okay, I get that. Because the game's up. If you do that, and I suppose maybe we're talking about some specific things to avoid that lead there. But this business of growing old and getting fast almost like I can get faster even though I'm getting older.
Yeah.
Do you think that's right?
I do. And I think one of the things that I left out the book, and I've been one of my clients who is a world masters athlete picked me up on, actually rightly. He said, one of the things you didn't talk in the book about was training age. And he said, look, I only got into cycling at 50, 55.
Uh,
So, I'm nearly 70 and I'm improving all the time. And it's a really good point. It's like I didn't discuss training age, and it was a bit, in a way, it was an oversight. So, yes, he can and is getting faster as he gets older. And you are, as you say, getting faster as you get older. And that's all fine. So, what I want you to think about, and him to think about, is at what cost? Is the cost too high? And is the cost quantifiable, or can you discuss the cost? Can you measure it? And if you can measure it, is it empirically verified? Is it evidence based? So, in a sense, yes. If speed is the only goal and you take it the dying part, then hey, that's fine. Go for it. If don't dying is important, then you've got to then start thinking about the growing old bit, the riding fast bit, and also the don't dying bit. And then, as you open the conversation, Joe, that's the bit that I'm trying to hold up in front of me all the time. You know, and it's all through the book. I'm trying to discuss those three things, and and really point out is which bit's most important to you. Growing old, riding fast, or don't dying. And we're obsessed with this not growing old. All of us, I think, on some level, and certainly societally, we're obsessed with it. And growing old, it's called senescence, cell death. And certainly, there's things that you can do to improve your health around cell death. And there's also some evidence that maybe there's some things you can do that can slow it down. But essentially, senescence is part of life. That's part of our organic being. Is that we get less good at copying our cells as they reproduce, and that's called senescence, and that's inevitable. So personally, I'm kind of at peace with that. But I also want to offset that wherever I can by eating better, training better, and not overloading my being with stress and things that are not good for me. Other people are like, no, cell death is not inevitable. My cells aren't going to stop reproducing more as efficiently. Like, okay, fine. Well, good luck with that. I'm sure there's going to be a time when, that's true, but it's not. I don't think true at the moment. I think the senescence. So far, no one's lived forever yet.
yeah. In fact, I have a podcast lined up with the president of Aura Biomedical, who is doing the million molecule search for the next rapamycin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that that we don't have it in our hand at the moment,
No,
but they're definitely looking for it.
of course, and they should. Absolutely, they should. And at that point, I'm going to completely recant to say, marvelous, excellent. Where do I sign up my subscription to that? But in the meantime, some of the book is sort of slightly philosophical. It's like, make your peace with that. Make your peace with
Yeah.
that this is inevitable. So it's a question of choosing your kind of jumping on and jumping off point. I mean, personally, quality of life is more important to me than quantity of life. And mostly, I think quantity of life and quality of life track,
Yeah.
and where they don't, and then I think it's, as adults, it's right that we should know where that is and how we handle it.
Well, good. This is perfect. This is it's odd to hear you saying what has been in my mind for the last few years. So I've found the master.
No, you
Very
haven't.
pleased.
You haven't found the master. And I should also quantify. I was never a top level racer. I was what in the UK I was what's called a first cat. I was constrained by a lack of talent and poor training and all the rest of it. I just achieved what I achieved, and it wasn't great. And I'm not the master of this subject. It's just, some of the book is just being an adult and talking around things with people who are also adults and want to talk about them also. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a lot to learn from everybody.
Well, fair enough. That's a part of being wise. But let me go back and just say, look, I was a cat 3, and I got my butt whooped by cat 3s and cat 2s and the occasional cat 1 when I was in a 1, 2, 3 race. So cat 1s were strong, as far as I was concerned. Okay, yeah, you didn't race in the Tour of France, but that doesn't mean you weren't pretty good. So okay, let's move past that. I do think that it does sort of start with goals, and it's always fair to say, oh yeah, you got to have goals, and then what you want really matters in terms of how should you go after it, right? And maybe there are people who uh winning races when they're 65 or 70 years old is way more important to them than being a healthy person alive at 80 years old. Okay, good. So they're going to prioritize what they do differently than me, because I think I can have a pretty good quality of life without maximum level racing right now. I can have enough exercise, but not as much as I would need in order to be competitive at that level. But yet, I think that what I'm doing is better for my longevity and my health span, that I think will track longevity, as you pointed out, because that's my goal versus the goal of the person who their ego, their identity is wrapped up in the medals that they are earning and the feelings of accomplishment that they have. My podcast partner, who has been less reliable about joining lately because he's in the middle of a move to South Korea, Glenn Winkle, he is a multi-time Masters world champion. And so he's all about training.
Yeah.
I think he's starting to shift his priorities as injuries have caught up with him, and now he's like incapable of training as hard as is necessary to compete at that level. And then I think that there are also people, just talking about goals, who athletics just never really mattered to them, and they don't care to do that sort of thing, and they're looking for the least amount of physical activity necessary for health. And so they're talking about walking 30 minutes a day and things like that. And that's it. That's all that they're going to do, versus somebody like me, and maybe I expect somebody like you, who you enjoy physical activity. That's a part of the pleasure of life. And so we would end up doing more, not because we needed it for our health, but because that's a part of our goals of enjoying our life, which we want it to last a long time. I want to be doing a bike tour of Italy when I'm 80 years old,
Yeah.
not a bus tour.
Yeah. Agreed. And even the guys like your podcast partner, and I know nothing about the issues that he's facing keeping that going. So someone's coming downstairs with some cleats here. You can hear. So, I mean, there's a sense in which I don't. How old is he, Glenn?
I think he's 67.
67. So at 67, if his goal is to stay fast at 67, he's almost certainly got to take a different approach than when he was 37, 47, and maybe even
Mm,
57. And that will be a question of reviewing everything. And we see it all the time here. We have a physiologist, Dr. John Baker, who works with us here quite a lot. And then he does a lactate threshold test on a really good athlete, and finds that their lactate threshold levels are not where they should be, and these people are struggling for performance, or they've plateaued, or they're all tired all the time, or they're overeating, and they don't have any data to back it up. So we put them
mm.
through a lactate threshold test, and that's Jimmy, who's just walked in behind me.
Hello, Jim.
Yeah, they say hello, Jimmy. Jimmy's one of the bicyclists here, and he's stealing a fan out of the studio. So they're underperforming, and then you do a lactate threshold test, and they've become lactate factories. So they're producing
Mm,
so much lactate because their training and their competition has been poorly matched. And
mm,
in trying to hack their training, they haven't got their time poor, so they're always training at a high level, which means they're always producing lactate. Their body's just now adapted. Okay, you want me to produce lactate? Fine, I'll be a lactate machine. See how that. And that's what's happened. It's like, okay, well, there's a moment where wisdom, where work ethic has overtaken wisdom. It's like, so the plan for them is different. You need to start training different systems. Humans are very
mm,
good at endurance. We need to train our bodies to endure first, and then we can bring in performance. If we turn it
mm.
upside down, it doesn't generally end well, and it doesn't generally end well for athletes of my age, 62, because we're trying to hack something at an age where in any other century we wouldn't be alive. So
Right.
evolution's not on our side there, Joe. There's no genetic imperative to keep a 62-year-old alive.
Yeah, I think that one of the issues is this time constraint that people have thought, they've heard, in fact, that, oh, you can just, if you don't have enough time, then just work out harder in the time that you have available. And so they don't do the endurance work. They're just doing high intensity work in order to take most advantage of the little bit of time that they're able to put into it. But then they have the problem that you're describing, that they're not good at burning fat. They're lactate making machines, and that limits their upside. But the other thing that it does, from a longevity health span perspective, is it injures their ability to be metabolically healthy, right?
Yeah, and I think to me, I don't understand enough about this, but I want to. To me, this is where the magic may be. This kind of layering on of stress and inflammation, and some of it's good because you need an inflammatory response to get a training adaptation to a stimulus. But how much stimulation and stress is right, and when does it tip over and become harmful? And I think that, to me, this is where the magic is for everybody, but certainly older athletes. It's like learning to understand that when you are burning lactate all the time, you're always you're hitting the red line because you're time poor. That comes at a cost. That comes at a cost that that you're right is systemic. And as we're going to quantify this, I think, as we sports science improves, we are quantifying it now, and that's one of the things I think I'm trying to get to in the book, Joe. Um, that you've got to slow down to go fast. Certainly at our age, you've got to slow down to go fast, and actually that's where you need this kind of reset and slow things down, and then gently build the speed up. So you've got a much firmer foundation to build your performance on. And I think I say in the book,
Yeah,
don't try and move into the penthouse when you haven't built the foundations. You can do it for a while, but it's not a good long-term strategy.
cool. Well, you have a nice way with the English language.
Thank you.
You should write more books. Are you going to write another book?
Yeah, I'm just starting one now, Joe. Actually, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, good. Well, we'll get into some of the learnings that have occurred to you since you published your last one, and we'll get some other stuff from you. Well, that's really good. So we've talked a little bit about getting back to this idea of how sports, athletics, and training kind of fit into the whole health span, being a healthy person, but living a long time, for whatever your genetic makeup is. When we've talked a little bit about metabolic health, going slow to go fast, teaching your body to burn fat, not just burning sugar all the time. Is there anything else that you would kind of put into that category?
Yeah, I would say as you're growing older, there's an irony in the fact that as you're growing older, if you want to still ride fast, you probably need to do less cycling. You need to drop out of
Mm,
cycling and put something else in its place that's working on everything that cycling doesn't work on, and recognize that cycling is essentially an abstract environment. It's not a natural environment, and that we need to do something else that's more natural to us and bring that in. And the faster we want to go and the more we want to cycle, actually, probably the more we need to drop things out and compensate with something else. So cycling, we're in spinal flexion, hip flexion. Well, then do something that's not in spinal flexion, hip flexion. So do something that's standing up, stand up paddleboarding, or weights in the gym, or swimming, or something. Bring in something else that challenges your body in a way that cycling doesn't. And work on this kind of age-related muscle loss or sarcopenia. So
interesting.
and those are the things that are difficult messages to us cyclists, because we like riding our bikes, and we don't want to go to the gym, and we don't want to do weights, and we don't want to. So and it's a hard message, but it's you have to. The older we get, the more you kind of have to bring other things on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think it's got to get right back to the whole problem of they don't have a lot of time, and so they want to, whatever time they do have, they want to do the thing that they like, and that's
Yeah,
riding their bike. For cyclists, and you're saying that okay, that makes sense. But if you really want to be better at riding your bike, then you have to do other things. I wonder if we can connect this back to the bike fitting. I bet there's a relationship between people who are they're so fragile essentially because they only ride the bike. They only move in one plane of motion. They only move in flexion, and every little millimeter matters to them versus the person who's maybe a little more healthy, a little more well-rounded. Heck, when I was a kid, nothing on my bike bothered me. And the older I got and the more I did nothing but ride my bike, everything seemed to bother me.
yeah, agreed. I totally agree with that, and that's right. And that's I guess our business is predicated on that, and that's why we have a physio here, Nicola, who's absolutely brilliant. She's also actually a very good bike fitter herself, but she really does that here. But we internally refer the whole time. She refers to us, we refer to her. We know in the first instance, we need to try and reflect their limitations on the bike position. But then it's like, well, let's be aspirational. If we want to get you to the place you want to be to achieve your goals, we need to change you a bit. And then so you have a program to change the person, and and that's where she helps us. And same with John's looking at their internal chemistry, if you like, the chemistry in their muscles and in their blood, and then Nick is looking at the musculoskeletal system. So we're trying to treat the whole body there with evidence-based science. It's like this is lactate thresholds are these are not open for contention. Blood lactate values are real. Um, so yeah, I can remember the question now.
No, we were just talking about how the more, essentially healthy a person
Yeah,
is, as well as functionally able to move in multiple planes of movement and flexion and not, it makes them better on the bike.
it does. Absolutely, that's absolutely right. Yeah, and yeah, and that's a method. So we measure everyone's limitations, physical limit when they come here. We're looking at balance and muscle ranges and all that kind of stuff before we even get them anywhere near a bike. So we kind of know what we're going to see. Even before we put them on the bike, we know we kind of know what we're going to see, because we've already measured their limitations, and that's a question of dealing
Right.
with the limitations, so they can perform better.
Yeah.
And part of that is going back to this kind of our kind of earlier conversation about how you kind of square this circle of time availability and what you're trying to achieve with your life. I think some of this is also a little bit of humility. Okay, maybe you can't do that, and so maybe just think about a different goal. But it's also maybe think about changing your life so you can build more stuff in. So rather than get in your car, walk or cycle or you know jog
Oh,
one day. Try and bring more exercise into your life and life into your exercise, so that the two are almost virtually indistinguishable. You're that person that's active And so you're looking at your general activity level. Never take the lift. Always take the stairs. Just kind of try and build that more in. So you're
Oh,
as you're older, it's just like exercise is part of my everyday life.
that's genius.
Do you know what I mean? And for me, that's how I get by, Joe. It's like I don't drive. I walk, I cycle, I climb the stairs. I'm always trying to do things that I'm trying to stay active. I'm never avoiding activity. I'm always embracing it. But
Yeah.
neither am I doing it, smashing myself senseless, trying to hit my FTP the whole time. So I think there's a lot we can do as people where we just commit to being more active and commit to trying to build exercise into everyday life.
I think that's right.
Try and never get in your car. Okay, sometimes you have to,
Yeah.
but try and never do that. It's get an e-bike.
That makes perfectly good sense. And some of it I think is gonna be this is a long-term plan, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like, I my house is where it is,
yeah,
and
exactly,
if there's no place to walk, then there's no place to walk.
exactly.
But the next house I buy, I'm gonna be thinking about that. And surely I can start taking the stairs at work, and maybe I can be using, a stand-up desk and different things like that. But yeah, I mean, I am shamed to admit that I am a person who sits at a desk all day long and then I try to get my exercise in,
Yeah,
right? Why not just be a person who is physical in my life? And I don't want to be a ditch digger. That I think would be too big of a leap. But if I can figure out how, like you say, to walk where I'm going and ride my bike where I want to go and be moving a lot when I'm, working, then that really takes the edge off. That makes my exercise limitations less limiting.
that's right. And and certainly, how old are you, Joe? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 61.
Good man. Yeah. So I'm same age. I'm almost 60. So yeah. So at our age, that walking is training. I mean, it's because it's you're probably your heart rate's at I don't know 100, 105, 100. I don't know, but it's really good. Fat burning exercise for us. It's
Yeah.
we're an extension. We're not inflection. And certainly if the walking is a bit more chaotic in the sense that it's not a footpath on, but it's kind of a bit rough and we're going up and it's like it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It counts.
Oh, it's good for the brain for sure.
Absolutely. And I think this counts. And this is kind of going a bit more in this direction on the next book, I guess. Is this counts? This counts. So that flights of stairs at work or you wherever you are building your visiting, that counts. That's because it's good stuff. It's not cycling, so and it's doing something different, and it's getting your heart up. And then commuting by bike, the whole classic thing about races is commuting is dead miles. I mean, that's absolute nonsense. It's not dead miles; it's good miles. And if you're kind of a bit tired, then get an e-bike, and rather than commute by bike, commute by e-bike. And if you're feeling good, turn the motor down a bit. If you're feeling great, then do you know what I mean? So you can adjust. And
Sure.
if you're not sure
Sure.
how much exercise you're getting, well, wear a heart monitor. So if your heart's meant to be at 125, 130 because you're trying to get your fat burning zone up, then use the e-bike and commute to work your 15 miles, but keep your heart where it should be. So you arrive. Do
Yep.
you know what I mean? It's like there's all this is available now.
Yep.
And to me, any movement and any activity is all moving towards the right goal. It doesn't need
Right.
to be at your red line to be valuable. It does not. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that we've you and I have talked about, and experts that I've heard scientists say that you shouldn't be at the red line all the time. That should be the least thing. Now, you do need to touch that
You do.
as a part of your
Yeah.
program, but that's the least thing. That sits on a foundation of endurance, as you said.
Yeah.
Don't build the penthouse without building the foundation first. So, yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. Okay, so let's move on into some other topics that I heard you talk about, and I've had other people on the show talking about, and I think that it fits into this whole category. I had a cardiologist, Benjamin Levine, MD. I had asked him because it was kind of a thing around that time that, oh gosh, athletes are exercising too hard and it is injuring their health. And he said, no, that's not true. What did you find? Because you looked into this question.
Yeah, it's the biggest. It's the biggest chapter. It's the first chapter I wrote in the book was chapter 3, which is 20,000 words long, and every other chapter is or probably half that. So it's the big first chapter I wrote. It was kind of the book's calling card in a sense. And certainly over in the UK, we were having these conflicting messages the whole time. High level exercises killing people, middle aged people aren't doing enough exercise. You should be doing HIIT training and really intense. No, you shouldn't be. It's like there were so many conflicting messages out there that and I was fortunate enough to be in contact with a couple of cardiologists who were very good cyclists, and then I went. We talked. They lectured here at CycleFit, so it was an opportunity for me then to go back to the core research and data with the people that did the research. Dr. Gemma Parry Williams, who I quote in the book, Ahmed Magani, who I quote in the book, who did these research programs into masters athletes. And there did seem to be this incidence in some of the research that showed that exercise with middle-aged athletes did correlate to more atherosclerosis in masters athletes. But it's as your previous interviewee suggests, these are not simple findings because, in a sense, exercise acts a bit like a statin. It takes what could be an amorphous kind of unstable plaque, if you like, and turn it into a calcified plaque, which, yes, you might have a calcified plaque, but it's stable. So it's not as essentially potentially dangerous.
Yeah, it's not going to burst and then get into the bloodstream.
Correct. So yes, there did seem to be a higher incidence of these atherosclerotic plaques in masters athletes, but are they dangerous? Well, as I say in the book, where's the bodies?
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's not my point, by the way. It's not. It's a quote that I took from somebody else, but it's a good one. And so, yes, there's more longitudinal studies need to be done. So we can't draw any conclusions. We should be careful about what conclusions we draw. And I'm not a cardiologist, but it seems to be that exercise is overwhelmingly healthy for most people most of the time. Where I think there is more nuance is around things like atrial fibrillation or AF, where there does seem to be a higher incidence of AF in mostly male masters athletes. That does seem to be a thing. But AF is eminently treatable, and there are ways that you can, certainly ways that you can ameliorate it and lessen its effects. And and one of those seems to be a relationship between alcohol and alcohol. Heavy exercise and middle age seem to be not a great relationship.
Interesting. Yeah, the alcohol thing, I think, is the wiser a person is, the more they're really looking at that, and there's some upside to it. Who hasn't enjoyed themselves, imbibing some alcohol? And at this point in our life, the flavor, some of the sources of alcohol can be really quite delicious, pleasure inducing. But
Absolutely.
there's a lot of calories, and then you're not sleeping as well. And now you're talking about AFib. So yeah, so there's upside and there's some downside, and you got to measure all that out.
I totally agree with that, and that's right. You shouldn't be like, okay, I'm going to give up alcohol completely, because there's a social benefit and a relaxation benefit. There's people enjoy it. I mean, I like, red wine was definitely one of my previous pleasures. But you also probably, as a midlife athlete, need to accept that metabolizing it is a bit more difficult. And so we probably shouldn't be drinking more as we get older, and also working out more intensively. Though that's another triumvirate that probably doesn't work that well.
Makes sense. All right, so let's talk about testosterone. I've heard you talk about it on another podcast, so I know that this is something that is on your mind. It's pretty common, especially here in the States. I guess that's all I know. And the people that I, used to race with and ride with, it was, you never really knew because people didn't want to say, but the scuttlebutt was that it was pretty a common thing, and it was really a performance enhancer. I think as you get older, some people are taking it because it's really, they think it's a health improver, and maybe it does make them feel better. The point that I wanted to kick into the conversation is that I had another guest on the show, Dr. Rick Cohen, who had talked about low T testosterone as really kind of a canary in the coal mine, a bit of a sign of health issues, fundamental health issues. And so taking testosterone is just sort of a Band-Aid. It's just covering up the health issue. Now, it may be that in the end, there's no resolving of the health issue, and you just want to feel better for your quality of life. So why not? Why wouldn't you do that? But that surely his point was that that would not be how you would start. You would start by trying to understand why was it low in the first place and then trying to resolve that. What was your research into that?
I certainly spoke to people about this, a lot of people about this. And one of the people I spoke to was a sports endocrinologist who I quote in the book, Nikki, who's got her own book out now. And she and I talked about this. And in fact, she and I have done podcasts together on this and also spoken at events together on this. It's a difficult one, this one, because obviously the way that a woman going into perimenopause and menopause, the hormones estrogen, progesterone, women are going off a cliff. So it's
Yeah.
not the same relationship. We have a linear decline in testosterone from whatever it is, mid-20s, 30s, and we have a linear decline as we go through our lives. That isn't the experience of women. Their experience is very different. And when they get to perimenopause, it goes off a cliff, and then when they get into menopause, it goes off another cliff. And it's it can be very unpleasant, and it can have very deleterious effects physically, psychologically, and so a lot of women now are choosing to take HRT, and it seems to improve every aspect of their life, including their athletic performance. So and the risks seem to be very, very small, and the evidence base around that is evolving all the time. So why not? And that's great that's now a much more discussed thing and a much more accepted thing, and women are living happier lives as they get into their menopause. With men, it's different, Joe, because we have this linear decline. So it's okay. At what point do we stop? At what point do we say my testosterone is now too low? 40, 35, 60? And where do you want to return it to? To the level you would have been at 30? I mean, it's a difficult one. If
Yeah.
someone came up with the evidence base that, look, guys, returning your testosterone levels a little bit to where they were in your 30s and 40s has very little risk, and very little side effects, then sure, it would be a much more live debate for me. But I just don't know enough about it, Joe, so I don't touch it. But equally, if it was very clear to me, my GP said to me, no, Phil, it's fine. You'll be fine. There's no risk. It will help your energy a little bit, and your ability to deal with work stresses and the rest of it. It's fine. I mean, but no one's saying that to me yet, Joe. That's the thing. So that's why in the book I raise it as a topic of discussion, but I don't really come up with any firm conclusion other than, well, again, it comes into that triangle of health, speed, and age. Where are you on that?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of, I'm not going to take that because no one's told me yet that it's not going to hurt me. So I'm going to edge more towards the being a bit cautious about it now. But I don't. That's me. It seems to be a much more discussed and accepted, and for women, with HRT, and the benefits seem to be very well documented and evidence based. I just don't see that with men. Do you?
Well, I think that there are men who have medical issues where they can't resolve it
Oh, sure,
just through more fundamental health resolution.
absolutely.
And so, why just suffer?
Oh, yeah.
Even if it is not going to be good for you in some ways. Anyway, this is a theoretical point of view. I don't personally have this or know anybody well enough to be able to, describe how that would be. But I can just imagine that this would be true, that there would be people who would fit into this category where it's just a quality of life thing. But for myself, I would be like you. I would be afraid. I would be afraid to start taking something that would then cause my body to stop making it endogenously. And so I would have to take it now for the rest of my life without going down the path of trying to resolve whatever was causing it to be low in the first place. Now, that I think is maybe falls into two buckets. One would be just sort of, stress and not getting good sleep and maybe not having a proper diet and maybe not doing, resistance exercise. If those lifestyle things that I could fix, I should fix them for sure. Okay, the
Yeah,
other bucket is, I'm getting older and the body just isn't working as well, for maybe lots of reasons. It just, that all sort of combine over time into this thing we call aging. And I actually am trying to fight back on that too. As an example, I take rapamycin, which is not really an experimental drug, but an off-label. I'm using it off-label for purposes of trying to get my mTOR signaling to function properly, so that my immune system will repair itself in my body as it did when I was younger. And so maybe I'll be younger. So I'm fighting against the aging thing too, but still theoretically, I can see how there could be people in the bucket where they've tried everything and it's not working and they just don't want to be miserable.
absolutely right. I mean, we're not talking about people here who have poor health because of low testosterone. Those people can go to their doctor. Sorry, we call doctors GPs here. When I say GP, I mean our your family doctor.
Yeah.
You go to your doctor, your family doctor. They do a blood test and say, "Hey, look, your testosterone is really, really very, very low, and I'm going to recommend that And that's another thing completely. We're not, I don't think you were talking about middle-aged athletes, taking testosterone to improve performance and kind of hack their performance a wee bit. I think isn't that what you were saying?
Yeah, that I think is where there's a mistake.
Yeah.
And it's a mistake if they have longevity and long health span goals.
Yes.
If their goal is to just win the Masters World Championship and they can get away with it, well, okay, then maybe it's not a mistake.
Well, it's banned. It is banned. I think. I think it is banned. So let's think about testosterone. So testosterone
Yeah.
is a male hormone, but it's not an active chemical in itself. It doesn't do. All it does is it sends a message to your body to do something. So I think what you were saying is good. It's like, well, what's the testosterone trying to message your body to do? So build muscle. Well, then don't take the testosterone. Go to the gym or do resistance training. Do you know what I mean? So I think look at what testosterone is trying to do, the message it's trying to send your body, and just do that. And don't take the
Yeah.
testosterone. That's to me. That's do the hard work. It's not an active chemical, testosterone. It's only a message. It's telling your body to do something. Well, do it
Interesting.
anyway, and then I think you'll get a lot of the effects. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, do the work.
Exactly.
You'll get a lot of benefits from that. And for the fraction of people that have done all the work and it's not working, okay, fine. You got to do what you got to do.
That's right.
But don't start with the shortcut.
Agreed. I totally agree with that. Because I think at our age, and it's good that we're the same age, that really ends well. It's like we're old enough now to know that, the hacks aren't going to work for us. We actually probably just need to go back to first principles and do the work, But that doesn't need to be onerous. It doesn't need to be onerous. It can be, just adding in 30, 40 flights of stairs a week. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like that's a lot
Yeah.
of doing 30, 40, 50 extra flights of stairs a week. That's good. You're an extension. You're using fundamentally using your glutes more than you would when you're riding on a bike. It's like it's good stuff. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be
Yeah.
onerous, and it's build it into our lives.
Good. Okay, let's shift gears because I think that you're right. And that sort of ties it back to the earlier point of, don't just be a sedentary person who then exercises. Try to be an active person in your life. And then exercise is not something where you're struggling to find the time
That's right.
because it's all the time when you're not sleeping.
No, there's one more thing that I think is really important that I almost mentioned before, and I didn't. Something I've become increasingly interested in. You just touched on it, and I think you may come back to it. So sorry. Sleep, I think
Uh,
is the
uh,
gold dust here. I mean, to me, this is the thing. The thing that it's so common to us that we don't think about it is sleep, and our relationship to sleep. Certainly at our age, this whole myth thing that older people don't need to sleep as much because they're not reproducing their cells, that's not the case. We need to sleep as much
right.
as anybody else. And if we're training, we need to make sure that we sleep because we may, when we have a hard training session, the performance dividends are delivered overnight. That's, that and it has to be the right level of sleep. It has to go into those kind of slow wave sleep, so growth hormone is released,
Right.
and that's where I think managing and understanding our relationship to sleep and our chronotype. So, are you naturally somebody who performs better in the morning or in the evening? And really understanding that is massive. And structuring your
Yeah.
sessions and your work around your chronotype at our age, I think, is really powerful.
Interesting. I wonder, have you worked out some things that work for you so that you can get sleep? Because I really believe that, I mean, they always say that the benefit from exercise is in the recovery from it, and recovery is in sleep.
Sleep.
So how have you figured it out, if you have figured it out?
Yeah, I'm figuring it out, which is embarrassing at 61, but it's the truth. So my natural chronotype growing up when I was racing was an owl. So I was just much better. I was a person that struggled to get to bed because I was just reading too much and fixing my bike, and so I always never got enough sleep, and I was always late to bed, and then I would always get up late, and so I was a natural owl. So my racing career, as such as it was, I was give me a nighttime race, a nighttime criterium, and I'd probably do quite well. Give me an early morning time trial, it's like
Huh.
that was really painful. So now I've just through circumstances, I'm a lark now. I'm up at 5:15 every morning, and I've turned so. And to me, that's my kind of architectural setting point. Getting me up early
Yeah.
requires a lot of other things to take place. It requires me to go to bed early. It requires me to, so it's made my structure much better. And now my peak performance time is in the morning. So my best time of the day is between 5 and 11 o'clock. So that's where I'm at my peak. And that's
Nice.
changed because my natural chronotype was an owl, but I'm now a lark, and it helps me.
That's
It's
funny.
helped me with everything. Getting up early and teaching and training myself to have the discipline to get up early has changed everything
For the better.
for the better, because it means a lot of other things have to fall into place for me to do that. Not least that I have to be in bed by 10 o'clock.
It's funny, you and I are not just the same essential age. We have a lot of things that are similar, except that you are a better cyclist than me.
No, I wasn't that good.
Okay, one more thing. We're going to run out of time. And you, as a famous bike fitter, I got to talk to you about bike fitting. And so I wonder, bike fitting might be another one of these canary in the coal mine things where the more unhealthy you are, the more trouble you have with your bike fit. And people who have no trouble with their bike fit do not come to see you. So you know less about those people than you know about people who do have trouble. But what is like the general things that you would say to somebody who says, "Oh, my bike bothers me. My butt hurts, my knee hurts, my neck hurts." And that's why I don't ride my bike that much, because it's just an uncomfortable thing.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I just worked on an article actually with Molly Herford from is it Bicycling Magazine, your American magazine?
Oh yeah,
She wrote an article, but she and I had a long chat before she.
I saw that article. It's good.
I think it's a good article. I think I like the way she's presented it, and it's good. I think she's done it really well. Anyway, so she and I thought about this a lot before we talked, and some of the things that she talks about in the article, which we talked about and I suggested was that if someone really struggling with a bike fit, before you go and see the bike fitter, put your bike on a stationary trainer and have somebody film you on it. And then, film me from the front, film me from the side, from the back. And then just look at those videos and say, is that how I feel? When I see that video of that person on the bike, is that my experience of me on the bike? And you say, so yeah,
Oh,
that's my
interesting.
experience. It's like most often times it's not. Most people go, "My God, is that me? I didn't think I looked like that." And then you can
That's right.
start to think about what the challenges are. Well, why is there a disconnect between how you feel and how you look? Let's talk about what that disconnect is, and then you start to draw out what the issues are. And
Very interesting.
yeah, and the other thing is, hey, this we didn't evolve to ride bikes. We evolved to run around and walk, and we didn't. So this is an abstract environment for us. Forgive yourself if you don't feel good on your bike. Really, first thing is forgive yourself. This is an abstract environment. Your body didn't evolve to do this. So let's try and
Yeah.
you may need some help getting this to the best place, and it's not your
Okay.
fault. And and that's one of the things we say every day here. All the bike fitters here, we all talk to each other. It's like, we didn't evolve to do this. Just, this is a difficult thing here.
Yeah.
So, and I think your observation is perfect. I love the observation that we only see the bad cases here. This is a
Yeah.
self-selecting group. All the people have got any problems, they never come and see us. So,
Right.
which is good and bad. But if you are in pain on your bike, if you ride 100 miles, you're going to have some mild discomfort, certainly at our age. But if you're in pain and things hurt and then they continue to hurt when you stop cycling, that's just clearly wrong, and you need to get it resolved.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're going to need help with that. And almost certainly, the conclusions you come to yourself could be misguided because it's an abstract environment. The feedback we get is not great. Do you know what I mean? It's not.
It's not natural.
We
Yeah.
don't make great, and I include myself in this. I don't make great conclusions about my own bike fit. I just don't.
Right. A person would not have good instincts about why is that happening.
Not necessarily. No, not
Yeah.
necessarily. Not on a
Okay.
bike. Not on a bike, because
Yeah.
it's like if a runner says to you, "Look, I know my left leg's weak because I have to kind of, when I run a jump over a log, I have to switch to my right leg for the takeoff." So that's real time. That's evolved function. They're probably right. When someone says, "Oh, my right leg's really, really strong, but my left leg's useless on the bike," it's like we don't listen, because we listen and we record it, but we're not jumping to the conclusion that they're right. We'll measure it, and then you measure it, and it's like, "Well, look here, we're measuring it here. Guess what? You're stronger on the other side." So they're not trying to be awkward. It's just
Interesting.
the feedback is difficult. And that's the
Interesting.
problem with trying to do your own bike fit, which is why I was saying to Molly in that article, keep it really simple here. Do some filming and think about how you feel and how you look and the disconnects there, and what's driving
Yeah.
those disconnects.
I love the filming. The filming is brilliant. In fact, I've heard that in other contexts of watch yourself working out,
Yeah,
watch yourself walking, and
correct.
people will be stunned
Yes.
at their dysfunction, that they had no idea that they were doing something wrong. Oh, well, no wonder my back hurts, or no
Yeah.
wonder my knee hurts. Look what I'm doing,
Yeah.
every second of every day.
Yeah, correct.
So that's really great. Getting back to the bike fit, the issue with the bike is I've had a few bike fitter people on the podcast, and I'm one of the people who I don't go to a bike fitter because I not really had problems. That's not to say that I never have had issues, but I've thought about it because of the guests. I've thought about it a lot, and it's a complicated problem, because sometimes it's the body, because it's this artificial thing, and your inflection, and if you're not used to being in flexion for lengths of time, no bike seat, no handlebar position is going to help you. You've got to get your body to be ready for that kind of a thing, and you're going to do a million pedal strokes. All right, well, you're going to have to get used to that, and that's not going to feel good at first. But sometimes it is the bike. Sometimes your hip bones don't fit on that saddle that came with that bike that you paid an ungodly amount of money for, and they put the cheapest saddle on it that they could get away with, and it doesn't fit you.
Right.
So, you need somebody to help you understand what you need to do there. And a proper fitting bike, a bike that not only doesn't hurt, because that's got to be the beginning, but also the bike that's set up so that you can, your power is going into the pedals so that, you're as fast as you can be. I mean, especially if your goal is to be fast,
Yeah.
well, why handicap yourself unnecessarily?
Yeah, that's right. I think everything you say is correct. And funnily enough, it's also the opposite is true. I mean, I was a very poor athlete at school. I mean, really poor. I couldn't really catch balls. I couldn't really throw them. I couldn't really, the team sports that we all had to play in British schools, I was good at none of them. None of it
Mm.
worked for me. When I ran, it didn't feel right. I couldn't, when I ran, I just didn't feel, I felt discombobulated, and so I was just that kid that, was last at everything. And then when I started to ride a bike, I rode a bike through my youth anyway, but then I started to get more serious about it. I'm just one of those people where I'm better on a bike than off it, and I talk about that
Mm.
in the book that, some people are, and I'm that person. I mean, I'm not now because I've been injured quite a lot, but, all before I got injured and old, I was that person that struggled to function off a bike, but could function on it. My body was
Mm,
one of those bodies that just seemed to work better in a bicycle than it did off a bicycle. But not everyone's
interesting.
like that. And so, and for people that, are struggle to get on a bike, it's a challenge. They need help. It's not automatic or easy.
Yeah. But I think the message is that there is help.
Oh
It
yeah.
is possible.
Oh my God.
Don't give up.
No, 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 no. No, no, we've never come across somebody who we've said, "Oh, geez, you know what? You need to take up table tennis." It never happens. There's
Good.
always ways to help.
Well, that's great. Okay, so we're essentially out of time, but I wanted to give you a chance to foreshadow this new book, and I don't know whether you can even guess at when it would be available, but what are the new topics or the new learnings that we're going to hear about in this new publication?
Yeah. So the new book, essentially, if you read chapter 8 in this book, the mindful cyclist, I'm going off not in that direction, but I'm looking at much more. That was, the midlife cyclist is about the cyclist body and our motivation and the philosophy of training and cycling and all the rest of it. This next book is definitely going more in that lane about, what is it that makes us, keep cycling. What's happening literally? Why can we not put this thing down sometimes, even when it's hurting us? And talking to people who have taken this to extremes. So some professional cyclists, some amateur cyclists. So, but really thinking about the cyclist brain much more than the cyclist body. So that's a clue of where this next book is. And
Interesting.
it's a challenge for me because I'm not coming to this with any real, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or anything else. I'm talking to a lot of people already about it and thinking about what is it, this thing that sticks us to this cycling, and we once we've got that bug, we can't shift it even when it's to our detriment. So people can be more enlightened about making choices about what's good for them and bad for them. So it will sit with the midlife cyclist very much so, but it's much more about emotional kind of mental side of it.
Excellent. That sounds interesting. I look forward to it.
Yeah, hopefully. Who knows? Could be rubbish.
Hey, this has been really amazing. Thank you very much.
Okay, lovely to talk to you, Joe. And I hope some of your listeners find some of that useful.
Yeah, I'm sure that they will. So where should they find you? I'm sure that your book is everywhere, but where would you send them to find more about you and your writings?
Well, the Midlife Cyclist is out in America. It's funny. It's had this kind of funny growth. I mean, it came out a few years ago, and it was, I noticed it was the number one cycling audiobook in America last weekend. So it's weird how it suddenly seems to have become, much more on the map in the US. So I've got no explanation for that, but other than thanking people like you and other people who've done podcasts and talked about the book, it just seems to have kind of created a little life for itself, which is lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's on Bloomsbury. You can get it. You can get it from bookshops, and I think it's out there, or download the audiobook if you want to, if that's easier for you. I've even heard that some people are listening to the audiobook and then also following it on their Kindles or on their device. So which I think sounds like I'm going to do that for other books. I think now it sounds like a really good
Multimedia.
idea. Yeah. So you're taking it in from both ways.
Exactly. Well, good. And your Cycle Fit, that's your business, is that right?
CycleFit, yeah. Central
And
London. We have two locations.
yeah. So tell us about that and your website.
So cyclefit.co.uk. We have two locations right in the middle of London. The one I'm in right now is called the Fire Station because it's an old fire station. This is where we do kind of all the performance stuff. The lead bike fitter here is Julian, my co-director, Julian Wall. Jules is one of the, he's a way better bike fitter than I am. He's one of the, I guess, top handful in the world who work at that kind of Tour de France professional level. He's comfortable at that level. So he's our lead bike fitter. Then obviously I do stuff as well. Then we got Vaughan, Jimmy, and then Ed was the person doing a shoe fit, which is why I moved. So yeah, there's a lot of us here. We've got Nicola, our physio, John, our sports physiologist. So it's here at the fire station. It's a real performance center where we're trying to work on correcting people's issues and injuries and also maximize their performance. And then Store Street, which is 500 meters away, is you can have a bike fit, but it's in trainers and jeans. It's much more folky and low key, and just trying to deal with simple problems in a simple way. And then if we can't do that, then you come over here and we start to attack you with lots of high tech instruments.
Fantastic. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I love cycling. I'm glad there are people like you helping people sort out their problems that maybe are keeping them off the bike. So thanks very much. And thanks for the
Yeah.
time, Phil. This was a great chat.
You're so welcome, Joe, and looking forward to chatting again.
Yeah, will do. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you so much for listening in to my discussion with Phil Cavell, the author of The Midlife Cyclist. You can find out more about Phil in the show notes. Oh, and Phil says if you're ever in London, stop by his shop to say hi.